Hi, this is Megan with Beadaholique, and today I'm going to show you how to make our Peyote Bracelet kits with size 10-0 seed beads. So we do have two different versions of our Peyote kits. The ones here are some examples of the ones that use 10-0 seed beads. We do also offer ones that use a size 11-0, so be sure you've got the right video for the size of beads that are used in the kit you have. Your kit comes with seed beads in tubes. It comes with a pack of needles, it comes with a clasp, and it comes with a little spool of Fireline beading thread. So some other things you're going to need are a pair of scissors and a stopper bead, and that can be any bead. It can in fact just be one of the beads from your kit. You can just use an extra. I'm going to use a different stopper bead just so you can keep it straight that that's my stopper bead. You may also find it helpful to use a thread burner like the Thread Zap, but you can get by without it if you just have scissors. In your kit with your instructions is going to be a pattern, and your pattern is actually going to be two halves the other way on the paper, but I've got mine blown up, just half of it at a time here, just to help you be able to see it, to follow along with what I've got here. This is the bracelet I'm going to be demonstrating. So we'll just leave that one here so that you can see how it looks. So these bracelets are done using flat even count peyote stitch. So if you are not familiar with that, I'm going to show you how to do it. Remove one of your needles from the package. We give you several. It is possible to break a needle, so we give you a few there. To begin, you're going to cut a length of thread, and I like to work with about 6 feet of thread at a time. Once you get used to it, you can decide how much you want to work with at once. Don't ever try to work with too much. You'll end up just running your thread through. It'll take a long time, so just get however much you're comfortable working with. Usually something close to 6 feet. We're going to thread that right onto our needle and pull it down. You don't want the ends to meet. You're only going to be stitching with one, so you want to go ahead and give yourself a little bit of an uneven side on there. And now before we get started, I'm going to pour out some beads. So I like to just work with a little pile at a time. And once you've used them up, you can add more. Now we're going to add our stopper bead. And all you're going to do for that is bring your needle through the bead. For this project, I'm going to use the tail end to attach my clasp later. So I want to leave a good about 10-12 inches. So bring your stopper bead that far from the end, and then you're just going to go right back through the bead the same direction that you went before. Don't let your tail get caught in the loop. And pull snug. And that's just going to hold that bead right there, and it's going to keep the rest of your beads from falling off the end. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to read these charts. I'm going to show you how to read from the bottom up. You can work from the top down if you prefer. You would just do the same steps, but you would work from the top of the second image on your pattern down, come to the first image and work down. I'm going to show you from the bottom of the first image up, going to the second image and working up. You can work whichever way you're more comfortable on that. When you start peyote, you're actually going to thread the first 2 rows at a time. As you can see, you have little valleys and peaks, little mountains and valleys along peyote. Now, the top here, we call those up beads and down beads. And the up beads are all one row, the down beads are the next row. They're going to jog back and forth as you do rows. To get the first 2 rows, you're going to start with this up bead in row 2, and you're going to actually string row 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and so forth, all the way across. So for mine, I'm going to start with purple beads, and I'm going to string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purple beads. Then I'm going to go ahead and go right here. Next is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 aqua beads. Next we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white beads. Then we're going to string 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purple beads. And that's going to be all the beads for rows 1 and 2. Okay, so it's going to look like this when you have the first 2 rows. Right now they're all in a straight line. Now we're going to go in and we're going to add the first bead from row 3. So here we have row 1, 2. This is row 3. So the first bead is a purple bead. So pick up the first bead. Now what we're going to do is you're going to skip the bead from row 1, that last bead on there, and you're going to go underneath the next bead inside there. And when you pull that snug, you see the bead from row 3 pops right above the bead from row 1. Go ahead and pull that snug to the left. Now we're going to add the next bead from row 3, which is another purple bead. So each time you add a bead in peyote, you're going to skip a bead and go through the next bead. And when you pull them snug, you'll see that your last bead has gone on top of the bead below it, and they're going to share that space between the row 2 beads here. Our next bead in row 3 is a white bead. So pick up a white bead, skip a bead, and go through the next one. If you're having a hard time getting started, just keep in mind that this is the hardest part. Once you have row 3 done, it's going to get a lot easier. Your next bead is white as well. Skip a bead, go through the next. And we do include illustrated instructions in your kit, so if you find it hard to follow this in a video, you can follow along with the illustrated ones. And then we have another white bead. I've got that on here. So skip the next bead and go through the following. It's very important not to get twisted. Don't let your rows get all mixed up. You will not be following the pattern anymore if the first 2 rows get twisted. And then next in row 3 is 3 more aqua. So grab an aqua, skip a bead, go through the next. So that's 1, going to do 2, and 3. Every time you're going to skip a bead and go through the next one. If you find you have a lot of loose thread down here, you can just take your stopper bead and pull snug. Next in row 3, we're going to have 3 purple beads, and that's going to be the last 3 beads in row 3. So pick up a bead, skip one, go through the next, pick up a bead, skip one, and go through the next. And one more. Pick up a bead, skip one, and go through the next. And you just want to go through that last bead that you added for the very beginning, because you don't want to go through your stopper bead here. And you can actually pull the stopper bead off here if it gets in your way, or you can leave it. It's up to you. I'm gonna pull it off so you can see better what I'm doing here. Now go ahead and pull that nice and snug. And there's your first 3 rows. And now, as you can see here, once you do row 3, your beads have gotten where they're going to be. So you've got your high beads and your low beads, high beads, low beads, high beads, low beads, and it's gonna look like a little bit like a zipper teeth, like little peaks and valleys. Once you've got that down, it's gonna be easier. You're just gonna go in and you're going to skip a low bead and go through a high bead. And each of your new beads will sit on the low bead before it. So next here, we've got row 1, 2, 3, 4. So row 4 here starts with a white bead. So we're going to pick up a white bead, skip your low bead, go through the high bead. The up bead is what I usually refer to them as. Okay, next in this row is going to be 3 purple beads. So skip the low bead and go through the up bead. That's 1. 2. And 3. And then next we have 1, 2, 3 aqua beads. And actually you can see the pattern's funny here. That's because it got twisted. So that's a good thing to show you. You can see your lines are supposed to be going up to the right, that here they're going down to the right. So what that is it got twisted here. And you can see if you squish that back around, they're going to be going in the correct direction. And that's only going to happen on the first couple rows. After you've completed row 4, it won't flip around anymore. So you can just go ahead and stop, take your bead out, flip it around, get it to go the right way. And one more aqua. Okay. And next in row 4 is 1, 2, 3 white beads. You can always count up if you lose track of where you are. Okay, and the last bead in row 4 is going to be a purple bead. Okay, so there's your first 4 rows. I'm just going to pull that tight. And you can see you've got the little up and down beads all along, and you're starting to see the pattern also of the diagonal stripes in this one specifically. So I'm just going to work through a couple more rows with you before I leave you to finish the length. And I'm also going to show you how to tie off and add new thread, because you will need to do that. You're going to run out of thread as you're working, because this is a large piece of bead weaving. So that's what it should look like when you've got about 6 rows. It should be starting to come together, and the more snug you keep your thread, with the delicas especially, the more firm and solid it's going to be, because it does kind of snap into place and lock into place. So as you can see, if you hold up your piece to your pattern, at this point you're going to start to see your pattern emerging. So you're going to continue your pattern working up, or if you've decided to work down, if you're familiar with how to do this, you go ahead and work down. And now I'm going to show you how to tie off thread when you run out of thread. And you're going to want to do this not when you completely run out of thread. Don't go all the way till your needle is just barely coming through the beads. You want to leave yourself about 6 inches or so to give yourself room to tie a knot. So first thing is going to be, I always prefer to do this in the middle of a row. I don't like to do it at the very end, because I like all my knots to be hidden in the beadwork instead of hanging out at the end. So I'm just going to go part of the way through the next row. So you're in the middle of the row. You're going to take your needle and you're going to go down between the bead that your thread is coming out of and the next bead in the row below. And what you want to do is hook the thread that attaches those 2 beads. And you're going to pull until you have a loop. Don't pull it all the way snug. You're going to pull till you have a loop, and you want the threads, it's very hard to see, it's very small, but you want your loop to have a little crossover to it. So if my thread right here is coming out on the top, it's going down behind. And now I'm going to take my needle and go down through the loop, and then just pull to create a half hitch knot on that thread connecting right there, and pull it snug. Okay, and then you're going to weave through several of the beads so that you're not cutting your thread right next to your knot. This is going to make it a little bit stronger. When you weave through peyote stitch, you're always going to weave in diagonal lines, and they can zigzag up and down, but you're always going to go through the beads in a way that there's already a thread path so that it doesn't show. So you can go up and down, you can go down, you can go up, it's up to you. Just weave through several of the beads until you've gotten some distance between your knot and your thread. And this is where a thread burner will come in handy. You can use a thread burner, it's very easy. You just hold the button down and touch it to the thread. You can also use scissors. When you're cutting bead thread in beadwork with scissors, you want to pull up with some steady pressure on your thread so that when you cut it, the tension will have that thread pop back down into the bead. So that's going to be how you tie off. Now to add new thread, what we're going to do is weave up through some of the beads and you want to work it so that you're coming out through the bead where you left off. So that for me is this bead right here, and I'm ready to add my next bead. Now leave yourself a tail of about 6 inches there. We're actually just gonna leave that and go back and tie it off and weave it in later. If you want, you can use a second needle to do it right away after you've done a few rows, or you can just wait until the end. You're going to go in and tie off and weave in all your loose threads at the end. So when you tie off your old thread that's ending, you want to go ahead and tie it and weave it, but then when you start your new one, that one you can leave. But I will show you. You're going to do it exactly the same. I'm just going to take my needle off here to show you how to do that. So let's say you're all done and you've got this thread and your other new thread ends just kind of hanging out. I'm just gonna put a needle on there. And right where your thread's coming out, again, you're going to go down between that bead and the one in the row before. Make a loop, go through, pull it to tighten that half hitch knot, and just like before, you're going to weave down through. And then you just trim that off as you did before. So you're going to use those techniques to add new thread as you go. And you're going to continue through the whole pattern or through just as much of the pattern as you need for the bracelet size that you want. And as you can see on the finished bracelet, where the bracelet stops, there's a gap for the clasp. And that gap is about 5/8 of an inch. So you can complete the pattern, or you can do as much of the pattern as you want for your finished bracelet size minus 5/8 of an inch. When you're finished weaving your bracelet to the desired length, then we're going to attach the clasp. And as I said before, the clasp will add about 5/8 of an inch. Once it's closed up, you can see the gap here between the weaving. So you'll want to decide the finished bracelet length that you want. Standard women's bracelet sizes are usually between 7 and 8 inches. And the pattern will get you through plenty. I think the pattern does about 8 inches of weaving if you follow the whole thing. So you'll want to go ahead and pay attention to how long your piece is and stop when you get it as long as you want. So I've got mine all ready to go. One thing to keep in mind, you're going to want to stop with a down bead at the left end and then an up bead as the second bead. And if you'll notice, at the beginning here, we started with an up bead out the way to the left. And what it is that you want, when you bring your two ends together, to have it mirror image here. So you're going to want them to not fit like a zipper. You're going to want it the other way so that it's symmetrical, so that when you put your clasp on, it doesn't jog over slightly, so that it lines up. So without cutting your thread, you're going to have, I have quite a bit, you'll have however much you have. If you don't have at least about 1 foot, you might need to tie off and add a new piece here. Take your needle and go, you have it coming out of the top here. You're just going to go down 1 bead on the edge and then go up diagonally all the way through, and it's going to end up coming out of the second up bead. So the 4th bead over. And then pull that tight. Now, you can decide how you want to color the beads that you put here. I've just kind of used ones that I thought kind of mirrored the stripe pattern. You can use all one color. You can do it however you want. It depends where you're at with your pattern too. If your stripes are, you know, positioned here, here, here. So you can just use whatever colors you want. It's all gonna look perfectly fine. So what you'll do is pick up 2 beads. Grab your clasp, take it apart, and we're going to go through the first loop. Then you're going to go back down through the last bead that you strung. Then you're going to add 1 more bead and go through the next up bead. I'll hold that out when it's all done so you can kind of see what that looks like. So you've got a little thread bridge right here through the loop, holding that down, and we will reinforce that at the end also. And you're coming back out of the next up bead. So the second up bead and the third up bead are the 2 that you're using here. Now you're going to take your needle and go through the next down bead and the next up bead. Now this time, you're also going to pick up 2 beads. You're going to go through the second loop in the clasp. If your beads come through that loop, you want to put them back down. You want them on the other side of the loop. So you can hold them in place, or you can just move them at the end. Okay, and then we're going to go back through the last bead once more. And now this time, because the placement for this loop is a little different, when I pick up my new bead, instead of going over to the right, I'm going to go back to the left, and I'm going to go back through that same up bead in the same direction that I did originally. So I'm going to loop around. And now you can see this one made like a little T instead of a little upside down V. Then we're going to take our needle, and again we're going to go through the next down bead and the next up bead. Okay, we're going to do this third loop the same way we did the first one. So pick up 2 beads, go through the loop, back down through the last bead, pick up another bead, and go through the next up bead to the right. Then we're going to go through the next down bead and the next up bead. We're going to do the fourth loop just like we did for the second loop. Pick up 2 beads, go through the clasp, back down through the last bead, pick up another bead, and just like the second one, we're going to go back through that same up bead in the same direction to loop around in a counterclockwise little loop. Okay, through the next down bead and the next up bead, and we're going to connect the 5th loop just like we did for the first and the third. Pick up 2 beads, go through the loop, go back down through the last bead, pick up another bead, and go through the next up bead. All right, and that is all the loops. Now what we want to do, we want to weave back through over to the left side again, and we want to go through that whole thread path again to make it a little bit stronger. So as you're weaving through, just like when you're tying off and adding new thread, you want to always go through at diagonals. The one exception, since we need to change direction and go the other way, we are going to have to not do that. So what you can do is go straight up and down 1 bead, and when you pull it snug, your thread is going to disappear between the 2 rows, and that will hide and it'll be fine. So just work your way over. You can zigzag up and down and get your way back over to where you started at the beginning there. Okay, I'm just gonna go back up a bead now. Again, straight up and down so that when you pull that tight, the thread disappears between the 2 rows. And then I can just follow this stripe back up. And I'm gonna go through my thread path all the way down one more time. So up through those 2 beads and through the loop in your clasp, and then over the loop, back down through the beads and the up bead that it's attached to. And just keep following along. And this thread path is shown for you in the last figure on the illustrations as well. I'll show the whole thing, so you can follow that too. This thread is extremely strong, so it seems like just 2 loops is not very much to hold on your clasp, but it really is quite strong. It's a 4-pound break weight, which means that a single strand of it can take 4 pounds. And since you have 5 places where it's holding, that means that the weight will be evenly distributed and it can hold even more than that. And then we're doubling it up. So it really is quite strong. So you don't need to weave through over and over and over and over again. I'm just going to go over a couple of beads, and I'm going to tie off my thread here. Just like I don't like to tie at the ends on the sides, I also don't like to tie at the very top here. So instead of tying up, I'm going to tie down, keep the knot buried. So I've got my bridge thread there. Second side of my thread a little long. Okay, so I'm going to go through that loop and pull it tight. And then, because that's pretty close to the edge there, I'm going to go ahead and go back in a few beads the other way. Remember to pull up, give medium tension when you cut, and your thread will pop right back in to that last bead. Okay, that's how you're going to attach the clasp. Now to attach the other side of the clasp, because we made this a mirror image, all you're going to do, flip your bracelet over, and you'll see you're going to have your tail thread here. You're going to have a down bead on the left. You're going to attach the second half of the clasp exactly the same way. So you're just going to thread your tail onto your needle. And again, you're going to skip down 1 bead. Now, what you want to make sure you're doing, the 2 halves of the clasp each have a little, like a nail head kind of on the top. You want to make sure that your little heads are on opposite sides so that your clasp fits together. If you put them on the same side accidentally, your bracelet will twist to close. So be very, very, very careful that you put the clasp with the little head, rounded head, on the other side when you do this. So just like you did before, you're going to do the first loop, go back down, and continue. And again, we do have the whole thread path in the illustrations, so you can refer to that. You're going to do 1 3 and 5, just like that. And again, you're going to do 2 and 4, the other way where you loop back through. Just like that. So go ahead and finish up the second side. Okay, so I have finished attaching this half of the clasp and worked it all the way around back through a second time. One thing to note, since you do have a limited amount of thread on this side, work it back through pretty close to the top. Don't go way down to work it back through. But I had about a foot and I did have plenty to go through it twice there. So then we're just going to tie off. And I've tied off and trimmed my loose ends as I was going. If you haven't, now you need to go back and finish off and weave in any other threads you have. Then close up your clasp and you're all done. And that's how you make our peyote bracelet kit using size 10-0 seed beads.